Close your eyes and take a deep breath. You are home now, and the world outside can wait. Welcome to another episode of Z in History. Think about how we use perfume today. You probably have a little glass bottle sitting on a dresser. Before you leave the house, you push a tiny button. A quick spray of alcohol and water, light and completely invisible, and you're done. It takes 2 seconds. It is completely effortless. But if we go back a few hundred or a few thousand years, scent wasn't invisible. It was heavy, it was thick, it was a physical shield that women wore just to survive a world that smelled, frankly, terrible. Tonight, we are going to look at what getting ready actually felt like long ago. We are going to follow a few different women through time, looking at exactly how they used heavy fats, thick resins, and solid silver spheres just to navigate their daily lives, and how these heavy scents changed the way they spent time with the people they loved. Chapter 1. Let's go back over 3,000 years to ancient Egypt. We are in the city of Thebes. It is late afternoon and the heat outside is completely punishing. If you were to step out into the street right now, the sun would feel like a physical weight pressing down on your shoulders. The air is entirely dry, filled with fine, white dust that coats the back of your throat. There is no shade, no breeze, just the overwhelming, silent heat of the desert baking the mud brick walls of the city. Inside a thick stone house, it is dark and a little bit cooler. A woman is getting ready for an evening gathering. The stone floors are swept clean, and the thick walls keep out the worst of the blazing sun. But even in here, the air is suffocatingly dry. She is sitting on a low wooden stool, wearing only a very thin layer of light linen. She isn't reaching for a spray bottle to get ready. Alcohol-based perfumes haven't been invented yet, and even if they had, they would be completely useless here. If you sprayed an alcohol perfume in this ancient Egyptian heat, it would evaporate into the dry air before it even touched your skin. Instead, she reaches out and places her hands on a heavy, cool clay jar resting on a small wooden table. The jar is thick and unglazed, rough against her fingers. She pulls off the heavy clay lid, and the sound of stone scraping on stone echoes in the quiet room. Inside the jar, there is no liquid. It is filled with a thick, dense oil made by crushing thousands of fresh lilies into a base of heavy animal fat. The process to make this took weeks. Servants had to gather the flowers before dawn, press them repeatedly into the cold fat, and wait for the fat to literally absorb the life out of the petals. She reaches 2 fingers into the jar and scoops out a large handful of the thick, heavy grease. It is sticky and incredibly dense. She slowly begins to rub it into her arms and her shoulders. She isn't just doing this to smell nice for the party. The sun here is brutal, and the dry air literally cracks the skin, making it tight and painful to move. This thick layer of scented fat is physical protection. It is a survival tool. As she massages the heavy grease into her arms, it locks the moisture into her skin. It feels incredibly heavy, almost like wearing a second layer of clothing, but it brings immediate, cooling relief to her tired muscles. She takes her time, methodically working the heavy lily fat into her skin, preparing her body to face the dry evening air. Chapter 2. Now that her skin is protected, she has to get ready for the party itself. And this is the part of the evening routine that sounds completely crazy to us today. She doesn't just put on a nicer linen dress and walk out the door. A servant enters the quiet room carrying a small wooden tray. Sitting on the tray is a cone of solid, white animal fat. It is about the size of a coffee cup, heavy and dense. It has been mixed with strong, sweet resins scraped from the bark of desert trees and pounded with more crushed lily petals. The woman leans forward slightly, and the servant carefully places this heavy block of solid fat directly on top of her thick, braided wig. It isn't pinned in place. It just sits there, a heavy, precarious weight balancing on her head. She has to keep her neck perfectly straight as she stands up. She walks out of the dark, cool stone house and into the warm evening air. Carrying that dense weight balancing on top of her head, she arrives at the gathering. It is held in a large courtyard, but it is crowded. There are dozens of people sitting close together. There is no air conditioning, no fans, just the heavy stagnant heat of an Egyptian evening and the combined body heat of all these people in one place. She finds her husband sitting on a woven mat near the edge of the courtyard and carefully sits down next to him, keeping her head level. As the evening goes on, the heat of the night and the warmth radiating from the crowded room start to do their work. The solid cone of fat sitting on her head begins to slowly, gradually melt. Over the next few hours, the heavily scented fat turns soft. It begins to drip down into the thick braids of her wig. It runs slowly down the back of her neck and slides heavily over her shoulders. It covers her in a cooling, sweet-smelling glaze. It sounds incredibly messy and uncomfortable to us now, to sit at a party covered in melting animal grease. But for her and for her husband sitting beside her in the crushing heat, that slow, melting weight feels perfectly normal. In fact, it is a massive relief as she leans in to talk to her friends over the noise of the musicians. The scent of the lilies and the tree resin trapped in the fat creates a small, cool oasis around them. Without that melting fat, the smell of the crowd and the overwhelming heat would be unbearable. With it, the air directly around her feels fresh and sweet. Her husband leans his shoulder against hers, enjoying the small pocket of clean, scented air she has brought with her. Because of that heavy, melting cone of fat, they can actually sit close together, relax, and enjoy the evening without the heat driving them apart. Chapter 3. Let's move forward in time. We are leaving the dry heat of ancient Egypt and traveling thousands of miles north to Europe in the 1500s. We are in a busy, heavily populated city, perhaps London or Paris. It is a freezing, damp morning in the middle of winter. The sky is a flat, heavy gray, and a thick, wet fog is sitting low over the uneven cobblestone streets. A wealthy woman is standing in her bedroom, getting ready to leave her tall wooden house to meet her husband at the market. Her clothes are completely different from the light linen of Egypt. She isn't trying to stay cool. She is fighting a desperate battle against the freezing damp. She is wearing heavy, scratching wool, thick velvet skirts, and stiff linen undergarments. It takes a very long time just to get dressed, pulling on layer after layer, tying heavy strings and fastening thick metal hooks against the biting cold that seeps through the wooden walls of her house. Think about a city today. We have underground plumbing. We have massive garbage trucks that come early in the morning to take our waste far away. The streets are paved with smooth, black asphalt, and the air is mostly just exhaust fumes and rain. In the 1500s, none of that existed. There was no plumbing. Everything that people threw away: rotting food, waste from the butcher shops, dirty water from washing ended up right in the street or dumped into the river that ran through the center of town. When you walked out of your heavy front door, the smell wasn't just unpleasant or annoying. It was a physical wall hitting you right in the face. It was a heavy, sour, constantly rotting stench that hung in the thick fog and clung to your heavy wool clothes. People in this era honestly believed that breathing in this bad air could literally kill you. They called it miasma. They thought disease was carried in the foul smells themselves. So, going outside wasn't just gross. It felt genuinely, physically dangerous to breathe. Chapter 4. Because of this terrifying reality, perfume was not a luxury item. It was not a beauty product used to attract a partner. It was heavy medical equipment. It was a physical shield meant to save your life. Before this woman leaves the relative safety of her cold bedroom, she picks up something very heavy from her solid oak table. It is called a pomanders. It is a round bowl made of solid, polished silver about the size of a large apple. It is heavy and cold to the touch. It hangs from a long, thick metal chain. She lifts it and hooks the heavy chain securely onto her thick leather belt. The silver ball clanks heavily against the thick velvet of her skirts as she shifts her weight. This silver ball is not solid all the way through. It is hollow, and it is built with incredible, intricate mechanics. It opens up like a tiny piece of architecture. If you slide a small metal latch on the side, the silver ball falls open into 6 little slices, exactly like the wedges of a silver orange. Each one of these tiny silver wedges has its own sliding metal lid. She opens the pomander and checks the wedges. Inside each tiny compartment is a thick, sticky, incredibly dark paste. Again, there are no liquid sprays here. Everything is a dense, solid mass. One wedge is filled with a dark, heavy paste made by grinding dried cloves and cinnamon bark into animal fat. Another holds thick, sticky resin scraped from a foreign tree. Another has a dense black substance called musk. These aren't light, pretty, floral scents. They are aggressive, heavy, and intensely spicy. They are designed to punch completely through the worst, most rotting smells in the world. They are meant to overwhelm the nose so completely that you cannot smell the street at all. Satisfied that the thick pastes are still strong, she snaps the heavy silver ball shut with a loud click. She feels the solid weight of it pulling down on her thick leather belt. She pulls on her heavy leather gloves. Now she is finally ready to open her door and face the city outside. Chapter 5. She walks out of her thick wooden door and steps down onto the uneven cobblestones of the street. Immediately, the cold, damp winter air hits her, carrying the sharp, overpowering smell of the open gutters and the crowded butcher's market down the road. It is a smell so thick you can almost taste it. Clinging to the heavy winter fog, she doesn't panic and she doesn't hold her breath. She just reaches down to her heavy leather belt. She lifts the solid silver pomander in her gloved hand, the heavy metal chain rattling against her wool skirts. She raises the silver sphere and holds it right under her nose. Resting the cold metal gently against her upper lip, she breathes in deeply, and the thick, sharp, spicy smell of cloves, cinnamon, and heavy resin instantly fills her head. It acts like a physical barrier, completely blocking out the rotting stench of the street. As she begins the long walk across town toward the market, stepping carefully over muddy puddles and avoiding the large wooden carts rolling past, she keeps her arm raised. She holds that heavy silver shield against her face the entire time. It must have been exhausting, walking for an hour in the freezing cold with your arm bent, holding a heavy piece of solid metal just to breathe comfortably. But for her, it is just a normal Tuesday. It is exactly what you have to do to survive a trip across a Renaissance city. The heavy silver ball provides a tiny, personal bubble of clean, aggressive spice in a very dirty world. Chapter 6. Finally, she arrives at the chaotic, muddy market square. Through the thick fog and the crowds of people, she spots her husband standing near a merchant's stall. He has been out working all morning in the freezing damp. His heavy wool coat is soaked through at the shoulders, and he looks exhausted, not just by the cold, but by the heavy, rotting air of the city pressing in on him all day. He is a practical man, and he doesn't carry a silver pomander of his own. He has just been enduring the stench, his face tight and wearied out. As she steps up next to him, she doesn't just greet him. She looks at his tired face, and she unlatches the side of her heavy silver ball. It falls open into its 6 slices. She reaches in with her gloved hand and uses her fingernail to physically scrape out a small, thick chunk of the dark clove and musk paste. She reaches over to her husband and firmly rubs the sticky, black paste deep into the thick, rough wool of his heavy coat collar, right under his chin. Instantly, his shoulders drop. The tension leaves his jaw. He buries his chin deep into his own heavy wool collar, breathing in the sharp, clean spice of the clove paste. That tiny, messy gesture completely changes the reality of their morning. They don't have to stand apart in the freezing market, miserable and trying to hold their breath. Because of that heavy, sticky, black paste rubbed into his coat, they can stand close together, sharing a small, invisible bubble of clean, spicy air, while the foul, loud city moves around them. It is a quiet, incredibly practical act of care that allows them to simply exist together in a very dirty world. Chapter 7. Let's move forward again, crossing the channel and stepping into the 1700s. We are in France now. The cities have grown significantly larger, the architecture is grander, and the clothing has become incredibly complicated. But despite the grand stone buildings, the plumbing hasn't really improved at all. In fact, in some ways, hygiene has almost gotten worse indoors. In this era, people are absolutely terrified of water. Prominent doctors have published books telling them that taking a hot bath will open the pores of their skin and allow deadly diseases to enter their bodies. Because of this medical fear, almost nobody washes their body with water. They simply rub themselves down with dry linen cloths, change their white linen shirts frequently, and hope for the best. Imagine a massive, ornate room in a grand stone palace. There are 50 wealthy people standing around, talking, drinking wine, and listening to music. They are wearing heavy, rustling silk dresses, incredibly tight corsets, and heavy leather shoes. The men are wearing thick wool coats embroidered with gold thread and massive, heavy wigs completely covered in white powder and animal grease. There are hundreds of beeswax candles burning in large iron chandeliers, filling the room with smoke and intense, suffocating heat. And practically none of these people have taken a proper, full-body bath in months. The air in that crowded, beautiful room would be incredibly thick, stale, and completely suffocating. Chapter 8. A woman standing in the middle of this crowded, beautiful, terrible-smelling room desperately needs a way to find some fresh air. But she isn't holding a heavy silver pomander anymore. That is considered old-fashioned and clunky now. Instead, she is relying on the clothes she is wearing. Specifically, she is relying on her hands. She is wearing a pair of thick, tight leather gloves. The leather covers her fingers perfectly and extends all the way up her forearms, disappearing under the heavy lace of her sleeves. Leather was a huge, essential part of life back then, used for everything from saddles and boots to belts and carriage seats. But making leather was a truly disgusting, toxic process. The tanneries, located on the edges of the city, used harsh chemicals, boiling animal fats, and fermented urine to strip the hair and soften the animal skins. A brand new pair of leather gloves smelled absolutely horrible, like a chemical fire mixed with a rotting farm dot. To fix this, a highly specialized group of craftsmen appeared in France. They were called the perfumed glove makers. Before they sold a pair of thick leather gloves to a wealthy woman, they put the leather through a brutal, incredibly messy process to completely alter its smell. The rough leather of those gloves was shoved into massive, deep wooden vats. Workers dumped gallons of thick, heavy almond oil into the vats, followed by huge heaping baskets of fresh jasmine flowers, lavender, and orange blossoms. The leather sat in that thick, greasy mixture for weeks, literally drinking the heavy, scented oil deep into its fibers. Then they pulled the heavy, wet leather out, hung it up to dry in dark, warm rooms, and rubbed it down vigorously with solid blocks of scented wax. They pounded the scent physically into the material until the smell of the tannery was entirely gone. Chapter 9. The woman standing in the crowded, unwashed palace slowly lifts her gloved hand. She rests it casually near her cheek, leaning her elbow on a small table. As she breathes in, she doesn't smell the thick, unwashed heat of the crowd around her. She doesn't smell the smoke from the hundreds of candles or the stale sweat trapped in the heavy silk dresses. She just smells pure, sweet almond oil and fresh jasmine. But these heavy, scented gloves aren't just for her own comfort. They are the only way social interaction in this era actually works without becoming unbearable. A man approaches her from across the room. He is wearing a heavy wool coat, a tight silk vest, and a massive, powdered wig that traps the intense heat of his own unwashed body. If they were to stand close together and simply try to talk, the heavy smell of the unwashed room and his own wool coat would make the conversation completely overwhelming and unpleasant. Instead, he bows low in greeting and gently takes her gloved hand in his. As he leans in close to kiss the back of her leather glove, the sudden warmth of his breath hits the treated leather. The heat physically activates the oils trapped in the fibers, and it releases a thick, invisible cloud of jasmine right directly into his face. It is a slow, steady release of heavy floral scent that completely masks his own body odor and the stale air of the palace. He smiles, relieved by the sudden burst of clean air. The heavy scent trapped inside her thick leather gloves allows them to actually stand close together. They can laugh, talk softly and flirt without the heavy, stale reality of the room ruining the moment. The gloves are a social tool, a physical barrier that makes intimacy possible. Chapter 10, finally. Let's step out of the grand, smelly palaces of France and move forward into the late 1800s. We are in a quiet bedroom at the end of a long day in a rapidly modernizing industrial city. Everything in the world has changed. The streets outside are starting to get electric streetlights, replacing the smoky oil lamps. Massive civic engineering projects are laying actual sewer pipes deep underneath the cobblestones. The rotting waste is finally disappearing from the streets. More importantly, scientific understanding has completely shifted. People are finally beginning to understand that washing with hot soap and clean water is actually a good thing for your health. Bathrooms are slowly being built into homes. The crushing, physical smell of the outside world, miasma that terrified people for centuries, is slowly starting to fade away into history. A working-class woman is sitting quietly in front of a small wooden mirror in her bedroom. The room is peaceful and clean. She doesn't need a heavy silver ball chained to her belt just to block the smell of the street on her walk to work. She doesn't need to wear a massive cone of melting animal fat on her head to stay cool in the heat. The heavy, physical struggle of using perfume as medical survival gear is finally over. Chapter 11. Instead of heavy fats or sticky pastes, she reaches for something completely new resting on her dresser. It is small, fragile, and totally silent. It is a tiny bottle made of thin, beautifully cut, clear glass. Inside the delicate glass, there is no heavy animal fat. There is no thick, sticky, black clove paste. There is a clear, light, water-like liquid. A massive breakthrough has just happened in the world of chemistry. Scientists have finally figured out how to extract the pure, invisible essence of a flower and suspend it perfectly in light, clear alcohol. It is a monumental shift. She doesn't have to boil anything in a copper pot. She doesn't have to spend hours pounding scented wax into heavy leather. She simply pulls the small, delicate glass stopper out of the top of the little bottle. She tips it gently against her wrist, letting a single, cold drop of the clear liquid hit her skin. It feels completely weightless. It evaporates almost instantly in the quiet, warm air of her bedroom. But as it vanishes, it leaves behind the perfect, sharp, invisible scent of a fresh rose. Chapter 12. For the first time in all of human history, perfume isn't a massive, heavy shield. It isn't a brutal physical process meant to protect you from the terrifying horrors of the street. It isn't a thick wall of spice used to hide the fact that nobody has bathed in 6 months. It is just a tiny, quiet luxury. Her husband walks into the bedroom. He is tired, his muscles aching from a long, loud day working at the new industrial factory across town. He sits down heavily on the edge of the bed next to her. The room doesn't smell like heavy wood smoke, unwashed wool, or thick animal fat. The tiny drop of rose perfume on her wrist doesn't loudly fill the entire room like the old, aggressive scents used to do. It is subtle, completely invisible, and deeply personal as he leans his head onto her shoulder, closing his eyes against the exhaustion of the day. He catches the faint, clean scent of the rose on her skin. It isn't a heavy shield blocking out a rotting world anymore. It is just a quiet, pleasant, beautiful moment shared between two people at the exact end of a long, heavy day. She puts the little glass stopper back into the delicate bottle, setting it gently on the wooden dresser. She rests her hands on her lap in the quiet room, surrounded by the light, clean scent, ready to finally turn out the lamp and go to sleep.